This episode of the Go to Bed podcast is brought to you by Enduro Fest, May 4th at the Wild West Motorsports Park just east of Sparks. If you hit the Mustang Ranch, you have gone too far, but not all is lost. You might want to stop in there too. And this is an AMA Extreme Enduro event, so you know it's going to be sick.
We've got Cody Webb, Ty Tremaine, Kyle Redmond, and Destry Abbott. And we hear there's going to be some amateurs there, kids, and the pros. So, moto guys, if you don't do off-road much, come try it out.
And I've done this event a couple of years ago, and it's gnarly. But yeah, they're definitely racing for all types of riders out there. So give it a shot. May 4th, Sparks.
Enduro Fest.
Be there. Go to bed.
But we're going to get unblocked.
Sometimes you see him out there and he's just fucking asleep.
Get a pillow, get a blanket.
No, I'm not a fucking dirtbag.
Go to bed. Tired, dude.
Good night. Go to bed.
Because then I can promote it.
Yeah, perfect.
G.
Parental
And feel free to joke about that as much as you want.
we
Awesome. Perfect. Make it a joke. That's good.
Yo, what's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Go to Bed. I'm your co-host, Fiki, joined with my co-host,
JP.
All right, today we've been asked to keep it PG, and this is the only episode we're going to do this.
Only one, so
So-
anyone listening, this is the guy that gets it.
All right, today we're joined with our guest, Jon Lee.
What's up, man?
John, I'll let you give your own intro. So, who the frick are you, and why the frick did you come over?
Yeah. So, Jonathan Lee, or Jon Lee, however you wish. I'm in the bedroom right now because we've known each other for quite some time, came from the same region. And I guess that we've worked on a kind of strangely similar things in totally like different markets.
Yeah,
In a sense that whether it's building businesses or creating content or anything else like that. So I heard the Go to Bed podcast and you invited me on and I was like, of course, I'll come to the bedroom.
Yeah.
Here I am.
Yeah, when did we meet? Probably like 2009-ish. I think the
Probably.
first time, because you were racing and stuff kind of before I was around.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when were you working with Jamie at Tech One?
Yeah, so we started that in 2010. I came back. My wife and I, we got married in San Luis Obispo and moved straight up to Reno to get the heck out of California. It was entirely too expensive.
Good call.
And we came up here and I was doing freelance design work while I was going to school. And Jamie Bonner, great man, runs a company called tech1designs.com. You can check it out. They make graphics for everything from motorcycles to, they've made a ton of stuff. They even made boat graphics, everything. But yeah, we started that. It was fun. And I think that's when we met because
Yeah.
That's when I met you too.
yeah, I was fascinated by like our mutual. I don't know if you guys would call him a friend, Adam Conway, but
No, we don't.
No.
yeah, you guys don't. I was fascinated by the amount of talent that kid had on a bike, and and at the time I was delving into cycling and getting interested in that side of things and training, which is entirely my life these days. But I was fascinated with the fact that he had so much talent, but I was like, man, he can't like execute on it. So like, I was trying to see if I could help him at that point a little bit too. So I think that's when we came into contact, and I really wasn't riding anymore. I haven't ridden dirt bikes in years, years now.
Yeah,
Damn.
and I was just thinking when you mentioned Jamie, dude, get this. So like, I don't know if he calls you anymore, but dude, every time Jamie calls you, and I hope he hears this, that you're on the phone with him for like 45 minutes, which is fine.
Yeah.
And then we're like, dude, you should come on the podcast. And he's like, nah, I'm not much of a talker.
Jamie, like any conversation with Jamie is always a good one. He's like one of the kindest people I think I've ever met.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like such a good dude. Yeah.
And he's got crazy stories too.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
No,
the guys
he'd be
live some
great for being
crazy
on here.
lives. He'd be
Yeah.
super good on here. Jamie, get on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get him on someday. And then he'll be all shy or something. But it'll be weird.
He'll
but,
clam up or
yeah.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell us kind of from the beginning. I mean, you're a Mormon and you went on the mission. So that's kind of interesting.
Totally. I bet like people are like, oh shoot, turn it off right now. Yeah, still an active Mormon. I served a mission. I was the dude in the white shirt walking around knocking on your door, but not your door unless you're listening to this in Chile, because I was in Santiago. It was an amazing time. It was like the 2 hardest years of my life for sure. Like people don't realize, like I totally get, I don't like people knocking on my door. And we really actually didn't knock on many doors. We just worked with people that were members of the church to try to help people. That's like the only goal of it, you know? A missionary is supposed to be out there, help people, bring them closer to Christ, just be good humans, right? And it was incredible, man. But my whole life growing up, like I raced motocross and all that stuff, right? And like if somebody asks you like who you are, my whole life growing up was like, I'm a dirt bike rider. You know, even though I kind of sucked, like I was never really good. Yeah. But I was like, yeah, I'm a dirt bike rider. And then like I went on this Mormon mission, you know, and like I remember like 6 months in, I was like, what? Who am I? Like, I don't ride a dirt bike. Yeah. I just walk around in a white shirt every day and get things thrown at me.
You're like one of the only good Mormons that I know. Well, I don't know too many. I don't know that many of them, but the few that we went to school with, I'm pretty sure that this kid Josh will be listening to this because I talked to him the other day. He's hella cool, but these kids they would like go to they had the Mormon school or the Mormon church right across from Douglas.
Yeah. Yep.
And so they would go and do like the church school, I guess, before real school started. And then they would come over. But
it's called seminary.
Yeah. So like, but all of them were either like crazy in high school or right after high school, and they were just going nuts.
I think it happens. Like I think this is probably a different topic than what usually is on the Go to Bed podcast. Yeah. But like, I feel like, so compared to the world's norms and standards, they're very different, right? Like you are peculiar. If you live the Mormon faith, you're different, right?
Yeah.
But you could say that about basically any system of faith these days.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like honor, integrity, that sort of stuff. It tends to be pretty rare when you actually look at things on a large scale. But so I think that it's really tough, and I'm a parent now. You know, my wife and I, our little son, he's 2.5. So like I constantly panic about this sort of stuff, about how we're gonna, you know, raise him in a balanced way. I think it's tough if you're a parent, like raising your kids with morals and standards, but then not getting them to the point where they feel either like they've just been presented with one perspective and that's the only option, or forcing them to do it, because that is certainly not helping them. They need to learn, like, if there is something, if that's something they want to do, or if there is value in it. You know, it's complex, man. Yeah. I had parents that were they were really good about trying to teach me why, rather than just like, this is what you do and do it, you know? So that was a big thing. Like, that's when like Simon Sinek, you know, that guy that did the TED Talk that talked about finding your why.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I don't know.
It's
I
like
think
one of
I've
the most,
seen that, yeah.
It's one of the most famous TED Talks there is. You should definitely check it out. He talks about like companies that talk about their why, their what, and their how, and how like unsuccessful businesses always lead with the what or the how instead of the why. Successful businesses lead with the why. He used the example of Apple, and this is like total plagiarism here, but sorry, Simon Sinek, but he used like the example of Apple. He's totally listening. He used the example of Apple, and he was like, Apple doesn't say that we are a computer company, you know, or like we make computers and software. They don't say that stuff, right? And said the story that they pitch, not exactly, but the story that they pitch is we obsess over every detail in design because we believe details matter, right? And then they get into like, you know, the way that we do this is through this. And I feel like everything in life, like my parents did a good job of teaching me that with religion, of behind the why. And that's why I stick to it this day, because I feel like it's a why for me, right? That matters. But yeah, man, it's a crazy thing that how we're all raised with these different things. If we don't have a why, I don't think we'll stick around very long. You know, we'll just move on to the next thing.
It's true. So you guys still go to church every week and all that?
Every week. Yeah, I love it, man. It's pretty cool. We just shoveled like 36 driveways yesterday morning for old people in our region. Yeah, like a bunch of people from our church. Yeah, so like I get a ton from it for sure. And I think a lot of people have like a bunch of misconceptions about Mormons. Like I only have one wife. I don't think that anybody that's listening to this that's married, like you probably don't want another wife either, or you don't want another husband, because it's already tough enough to manage one relationship. I don't even know how you would manage multiple. Like,
well, dude, that show on Netflix, the 3 wives, 1 husband, those guys are weirdos, dude.
Crazy, right? Yeah. And you guys know it from relationships. Like, how complex would that be, trying to manage multiple relationships? And then having them know about it? Like, I don't even, So, but we're totally normal people. You know what I mean? We just, we're peculiar. We do have a lot of kids usually. We only have 1, but
Yeah,
That's
my
a weird
family,
thing.
my aunt has a bunch of kids. I don't know like the exact number, maybe like 5.
Yeah. And it's not like a contraception thing either. Like, I know like certain faiths like don't believe in contraception. That's not the case for us. I don't
What's
know why.
contraception?
Like condoms or anything else, the birth control, anything like that. Yeah. A lot of them don't believe in it.
Oh,
So,
really?
Yeah. I've heard of
Damn.
that. So,
Damn, dude, you were checked out during school, huh?
Dude, hell yeah. I did not pay attention in school, dude. Yeah, I'm always asking them, oh, what's that mean? Oh, yeah, what's that?
Go to school.
At least I know what Pangea is.
I brought us. It's true. I brought us off the rails, but like I went on my mission, and then after my mission, I came back, and I was just going to school and did not ride dirt bikes.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to school for marketing with the intent of going to Cal Poly, and I was going to Cuesta Community College. That's like a super common thing in San Luis Obispo. People go to Cuesta, and then they transfer into Poly at the last minute to get the degree at Poly. Right? Yeah. It's kind of like any JC, how it transfers into the university.
Yeah.
And we got the heck out of there because it was just too expensive. Came here, was in school for 2 years. Then when I was a junior, I dropped out of college and started Tech One with Jamie. Jumped off from that. Tried to start another business. Failed pretty big. Dropped that one off. Got a lot of debt. And then now these days, I got on with a company called TrainerRoad. And really brilliant guys here. And we got in basically on the ground floor. And now we're a massive company in over 150 countries and have people using the app every day and making people faster.
Yeah.
Do you still have debt?
No.
There you go.
Yeah, so
we're out of it.
Let's talk about TrainerRoad later, but tell us about the failed one first.
Yeah, so it was called Hot Lap, which like a bunch of people that didn't know anything about motocross, they were like, what's that? Because that could be something totally different. Yeah.
Adam Conway knows about Hot Lap City. He won the Hot Lap at Hangtown, I think in 2012. Fully pinned around the track.
250 beginner class?
Well, yeah, he looked like a beginner, that's for sure.
So basically I was into cycling and I saw the fact that sport was super data driven. Meaning that like basically like cyclists, they don't even use heart rate. They use power meters. So these things that measure your actual output on the bike, they're usually in like part of the cranks or it's part of the hub, something like that, part of the pedals. Okay. And it measures how hard you press on them and how quickly you spin them. And then like a generator, it tells you how many watts you're making. It's like that simple, right? So like who cares what your heart rate is? Like your heart rate can be whatever it is, as long as you're putting out the necessary wattage to go forward at the rate, that's what matters, right? And like because of that, it's crazy how like specific cycling is. I mean, I guess it's kind of like weightlifting though, because you can measure the weight that you're lifting and the reps that you're doing. So that's how you can have like a 1 rep max, right? Mm-hmm. And then you work back from your 1 rep max to build out a whole program, periodize it, and you can get there. And I was just frustrated at the fact that motocross is like totally results driven instead of data driven. It's just like, I'm going to get first, man. I'm going to go for it. Yeah. And like you get like 17th and they're like, what happened? I don't know, man. Just didn't go fast enough. Okay. Like I was just like, there's got to be a better way. Like, in other words, we should show people what they're doing wrong, what other people are doing right, and then hopefully they can get better. So that was the whole concept behind the Hot Lap. And I'd use Strava and I thought we could use geolocation. We could track a person's activity. They could see their line choice. They could see what other people are doing. They could pair things like heart rate monitors, that sort of stuff. It could have a huge social component, obviously, like Strava. It could have plenty of ways to monetize it. If you bring in brands and then you bring in expiration dates on like fatigable parts, that sort of a thing, you'd be able to monetize it really well. But the problem was I wasn't a software developer. And my co-founder at the time, Nick Vandermeide, great friend, he also was not a software developer. Both of us were marketing guys. Mm-hmm. So we had like this clear vision of how it could work, but we had no way to actually make it work. And so basically we got into a situation where we had a developer that we started working with. He was out of Las Vegas. And the whole time we're trying to raise venture capital, right? So we were trying to raise venture capital. We found this, we were talking to Tony Hsieh's, if you know Tony Hsieh is the guy that started Zappos. He had this whole vision for like the downtown project of Las Vegas, where he was like, it's going to be like a self-sustaining community and we're going to just fill it with all these startups. We're going to, the downtown project is going to basically fund these startups and that's how it's going to be. We were close to signing term sheets on that. We had term sheets from other people. Our software engineer got a much better gig, and the money that I was paying him out of the basically nothing that I had coming in was nowhere near enough to keep him. So he took off. And then at that point, it was kind of like, okay, well, we really need to take one of these venture funding deals. And the tricky part is we don't have a good product to show for it yet. So I decided that I'm just going to learn to be a software engineer. So I just didn't really sleep, and I just worked nonstop for about 6 months or 3 months, I guess. And then we got an alpha, basically like the first version of the product. It worked kind of. It worked enough to show people. Mm-hmm. And then at that point, even more sleepless nights, put a ton of work into it, got to the point where it was actually, I was uploading my rides and I could see where I went and I could see why I was faster or slower, right? So we're basically to the point where we had like what they call an MVP or a minimum viable product. That's like a lean manufacturing thing. We had that minimal viable product. And then at that point I was like, we really need to close a deal to get some financing because we are dirt poor and we're running out of money. I remember even at one point I was sitting at home working and then like the power shut off and I was like, it's like a sunny, warm day. I wonder if somebody hit a telephone pole. Like nobody had a telephone pole. We just couldn't even pay our electric bill. Like, damn, you're completely empty on money, right? I'm trying to get this thing going. And I was trying to pick up design jobs on the side. I was picking up any job I could on the side just to try to keep it going. Meanwhile, I'm like driving down to Las Vegas, over to the Bay Area, down to LA, to Utah, like meeting with like investors and that sort of stuff. And I'm just wearing the same suit. Like, you know what I mean? Like looking like acting like it's totally normal. This is how I dress every day. Right. But, really down. And I was like, in fact, even one time coming back from San Francisco, I remember we ran out of money and I ran out of gas and I was like sitting back trying to think about what I was going to do. Luckily at that point, my parents, they do not float us in any way. I called my dad and he's like, begrudgingly gave me like the $20 to fill up the tank and get home. Right. Like had some zero times. Right. Yeah. But we got to the point where we had some couldn't say term sheets because I didn't have papers in front of me, but we basically had an interested investors that said, yep, let's do it right now. And Nick and I both felt really wrong about it. And it was really hard because we basically were building this thing and we thought this has legs. We had social proof. There were a ton of people that wanted it. It was like people were talking about it online all over the place. But the term sheets that we were getting weren't there. And it kind of came to that down to the point where we were the wrong people to idea fit. And I think sometimes entrepreneurs just need to swallow that. Like you can try as best as you can, but maybe you're not the best person to make that idea happen. And in our case, somebody else made that same idea happen, which is now LitPro.
Right. Yeah. I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were way better at executing than us and we weren't able to do it. I'm really glad that we didn't take that funding because I don't love the economic outlook for the motorcycle industry these days. It's not very good. So I like not being in that space, but it's crazy how that works, you know?
Yeah.
You give everything and then fold it up. And then the cost of holding up a business, they make you pay to close your business down. And then all the debt that you've racked up on your cards, that sort of stuff, that doesn't go away. So yeah, it's tough. It's hard.
Well, dude, I've never felt dumber talking to someone in person than I feel talking to you. But like, how did you? I mean, you guys were at what, in your early 20s doing this stuff? Like, how did you even know? Like, these are the next steps on what we need to do as far as like trying to get funding or meeting with all these people? Because I'm just trying to think, like, most people out there that have an idea, maybe they'll get pumped up on it, and you guys are the marketing guys, so it's like, oh, this is a great idea, but that's all it ever is. So having no business experience and 22 years old, how did you guys know to take that next step and at least trying to pursue it?
I think so, just being scrappy and being willing to learn. And like one of the reasons that I dropped out of college, I think that college is fantastic. And I think that it gives short digression here. I don't want to say that everybody should drop out of college because I think that it's got its place for certain people. Like my brother is genuinely a rocket scientist. He can't tell people what he does for work, right? Like that dude should go to school. He's doing some important stuff. My sister's an architect, same deal. Like I don't want some random dude that's like, I looked it up on YouTube. I know how to build your house, but I want him to be certified. But in the case of marketing, like that's a tough one to really justify the degree's worth it. I was sitting there in these business classes and I had these guys like telling me about how they were running like these businesses. And I remember one guy was running like a music store. And like I went to the music store after the first day of class because I was like, if this guy's doing something, I want to like see his product. And it was like terrible. It was the worst business I've ever been in, right? And I'm like, why is he teaching this? Like I'm not learning anything from him. And these days, especially in the world of business, you can learn so much if you just go on the internet and you work really hard and you read a lot and you're humble and you learn and you try things instead of just reading them. Like we all have information at our fingertips, but actually putting things into practice and trying them. So that was it. We had some good mentors here locally. I say good. They were educated on this sort of stuff, but I do believe that they kind of pushed us in the wrong direction in a lot of ways to just push so early for angel and venture funding like that. But I think that was the main thing. I was like, this needs to happen. How have other people done it? I'm going to research that, and then I'm going to use my brain to think maybe there's a better way to do it. So maybe I was wrong when using my brain. I don't know, but yeah, that's it. I think anybody can do it. I mean, you do it though.
Yeah.
I mean, like that's how you've been able to like.
Yeah, but my stuff is simple compared to what you were just talking, like software and all that, dude.
Right.
Even if I had an idea, I'd be like, well, can't do it. Can't build an app, so
it's hard, man. Yeah. It's super hard. And it was the most frustrating part, I swear, was I would sit down at a co-working space here in Reno. I found a co-working space, and I would sit down with these like super bright engineers, but they didn't have like, you know, perhaps the best people skills. And like I would write I'd basically build out like whether it was the tracking algorithm that we had to try to basically tell this is a good line, this is a bad line. And I'd be working on that. Or even like something simple, like I'm just trying to trace a red line where I went on a map, right? And I would like pitch it to them and like they'd be like, no, that's terrible. And like that's like all I would get. And then I'd be like, well, how do you do it? Kind of complex. And they just like type for a long time and then they have something. And I'm like, yeah, okay, well, I don't know how to do it. Like, I'm glad that you know, that's neat. But like, I'm asking you for help, you know?
Right.
And it's really hard to get that sort of help, but ton of Googling and tireless searching and trying, and it works out, kind of, maybe not.
So were you, when you guys folded that, were you already with TrainerRoad at that point?
I just started, actually. So perhaps that eased the transition in my mind, right?
Yeah.
And some would say, don't get any sort of side job, because then, you know, you'll lose your hunger for it. Maybe that's the case too.
Yeah.
But I don't think we would have beat Lit Pro, so I'm kind of glad that it got cut off when it did.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just started doing some consulting work for them. They saw like the ability that I had to generate social proof, and that was like a natural skill or one that I had learned, something like that. So they were like, hey, we need help, because TrainerRoad was like, it's an app or software as a service, right? So app, website, that sort of stuff. But like people, so it launched, it's crazy how it launched. And like, you can learn so much stuff from this, but basically they launched it on a forum, or the CEO was, he was a triathlete, and he worked at a Fortune 500 company as a software engineer. He hated his job. It was like the cubicle one where he was designing slot machines.
Okay.
And like his most stoked day of work was when he got to be the model for like one of the games that they had. Because they have like the super corny games that you see in like hotels and casinos. One of them was called Cougarlicious. And it was like a bunch of like, they had a bunch of old cougars and then like a young like cougar bait guy.
Oh, okay.
And he got to be the cougar bait guy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that's like his claim to fame.
He should have stayed.
No, right? Yeah, he peaked right there. So. But and then he basically like, so he didn't like his job. He would go in the mornings and do this like indoor cycling class, but it's like not like a spin class where they dance on the bikes or something. It's like serious cyclist sort of stuff. And this coach named Coach Chab was there. He had these awesome workouts that always, like, when you were doing it, you were like, I don't think I can finish this. But then, like, you would finish it. And then at the end, you'd be like, I did that. That's pretty cool. And Nate basically was like, this software that they use is super janky. I bet I could make it on my own. It would be way better. And then people could just train at home. And that's what he started off with. And he was part of this, like, internet forum. And, like, forums, some people say, like, forums are, like, old web. But, like, they're awesome. And he basically was on the forum and he was like, hey guys, I want to make this. Would you pay for it? And they were like, yeah, totally. So he made it. And then he asked them, how much did you pay for it? They're like, $8 a month. So he charged $8 a month.
Yeah.
And like after he started doing it, and then that Coach Chad guy came on, they ended up, I think they put like $2,000 into it just to get the server space, all that stuff. And then after week 2, I think it was profitable. We've been profitable ever since. And there's no venture capital, nothing. And we're 70, well, we'll probably be over 80 employees here in a week. So, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
80 employees, 150 countries.
Yep. More than, I think we have over 100 million rides completed or workouts completed. Yeah.
How many active users are there, like monthly?
We never say. So that's like a super secret thing.
Okay.
Not even my wife knows that.
Wow.
So it's something that so We do have competitors in the space for sure. There's one big one, and it's like a game where like you pedal and your avatar pedals through the world in front of you. And
I've seen that.
yeah. So like we don't care about that. Like if you're a cyclist that wants to get faster, you just train. Like you don't need to be tricked into thinking you're outside.
Yeah.
Right? So, but we have stiff competition from them. I think they've raised something like 170 million in venture capital. It's crazy. Oh. So because of that, we stick to our guns. And for a long time, it was actually super helpful because everyone thought like those TrainerRoad guys are a super tiny business. Like we never want to get into that. And meanwhile, our growth rate was just like going through the roof, and we're growing constantly. So it's just something like, put it this way, if we put it out there, it would make us look big. But does that really help us in the end? Because we're not looking for venture funding right now. Mm-hmm. If we were, obviously those guys would know. But it could certainly hurt us, right? In the sense that like then a smaller company says, hey, our competition has this many active users. And then they go to venture funding, and basically a venture capitalist looks at it as proof of market, right? And then after that, they can basically raise on that. So we just figure it doesn't help anybody. Might not hurt, but doesn't help anybody.
It's kind of cool. I'd like to be a part of that, and because you're like, or anything like that, you're like, you don't know if it's big or if it's small, but you'll know if like your buddies have it, Yeah. And then, or it's kind of cool because say you meet someone and they have that too, you're like, oh, tight. Like, it's like a homie thing. It's like low key, but big.
No one really knows how big it is.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, sick, dude. I'm part of that too. And they're like, yeah, so is the rest of the world, but no one knows it.
No one knows. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's at the same time, like we had to be careful because for a long time we had that mindset. And I think we were pretty bad at telling how big we actually were. And I think it could be helpful to us in some respects to project how big we are in some ways, but perhaps not through just sharing, monthly active users.
Yeah.
But it's big and it's growing constantly, and it continues to grow.
What level are you? Are you like CEO or something? Or?
Nope. So we only have 2 founders. It's a super interesting topic too on this, and like thinking of how you structure a company, because that's like a whole thing too.
Yeah.
So we only have 2 people that own portions of the company. Our CEO retains the majority ownership, and then our head coach has a smaller portion of it. I don't have any equity in the company, no shares, no anything like that.
Just employee?
I'm the marketing director. Cool. So I've been, I guess I'm including the founders, employee number 4.
That's up there.
It's pretty great. As far as how a company like exits and then how that rewards people, if you have equity, usually that's really great.
Yeah. Right.
And I don't have equity, and it's like a really interesting point. And I talk to our CEO about this all the time. But when you're starting a company and thinking and like making, I guess, deciding the organization of it and the ownership percentages, all that stuff, that is something that I feel like people need to put a ton of focus on and a ton of time and patience, and they don't. They usually like it's 2 people and like 50-50. It's cool. Like never do 50-50. Also, don't do 51-49. Like that's what a lot of people say. They're like, do 51-49. So then one person has majority. Yeah. Like the first person to come up with the idea. Like it should not be that way. If you haven't founded your company yet, like once you go to found it, you should quantify how much work you've done and how much work the other people have done. And you need to set basically a precedent straightforward in the beginning saying, all right, I've done 85% of the work. I get 85% of the company. You've done 10%. And if the guy that's done 10% says that's not fair, he should get the heck out of there. You don't want him anyway.
That's
right?
true, yeah.
So like you need to set that precedent of like honesty in the beginning, and it should be fair. Like we're raised with like blue ribbons in school. Like everyone gets the same amount and it's all fair and everyone wins. Like it's not that way. It should not be that way.
Well, it'll be that way if someone donates $100K for a head tap.
That's right. That's right. You're splitting it half and half. I heard about that.
Yeah, but really I should get 0 and P gets 100. But that's just because he's nice. And I bought the microphones.
Yeah, he bought the mics.
You'll get your microphone cost recouped.
Yeah, I'll get the $500 back or whatever, and he can have the $99,500.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's dumb.
So aside from TrainerRoad, you're just crazy cycling all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I see you riding all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, you're competing all the time, right?
Yeah.
So mostly enduro or cyclocross or
cross country.
Too, huh?
Yeah. So like, so I guess coming from the moto side of things, I got into cycling at first just because I remember seeing like Ricky Carmichael cycling, and I was like, Ricky does it. Yeah. I should do it, you know? But And I like road for sure. It's super fun. I like criterium racing, especially, which is like short laps
In a circle?
in a circle. Basically, it's like 1 mile loops. It's like NASCAR on a bicycle.
Okay.
But it's super fun because it's like a chess match. But every move costs energy, and you only have a finite amount of energy. And then you can use other people to like steal energy, basically, where you just kind of like ride in their draft for a while, right? Or you basically tell somebody, you can totally be like yell at them or like kind of like, yeah, you're doing great, man. And they'll continue to pull a little longer for you, that sort of thing. So I like criterium racing for sure. It's really aggressive. There's a ton of like, banging shoulders and that sort of stuff and elbows. Like, and it's pretty sketchy. Crashes happen, but it's super fun. But mountain biking, coming from the moto side, is like everything for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And cross country mountain biking is what I like most because I like the balance of the fitness side of things. So that's mostly what I do. I race for Yeti, the company out of Colorado, Yeti Cycles.
That's
And
sick.
yeah, they're an awesome company. Super interesting company story there too. But yeah, race for them. And I put a ton of time and energy into that. And I honestly don't know why. Like, sit back and think about it. Like I get like a little medal or something if I win something.
Yeah.
Like it's like nothing.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
It's still cool to win. Like just the feeling of winning and being the best that day is more than the medal.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think everything that goes into it. Like I like that process of that's kind of the cool thing about cycling is you are constantly brought up against like your limits on like you can ride the same hill all the time, right? And while at first it may be really hard to get up it, sure, you'll get to a point where you can get up it, but it never gets easy. It's always hard. You just go a little faster, right? But it's like always hard. And that's something that I feel like is just really valuable in cycling. And I do a ton of interval training. That's what our product is, TrainerRoad. That's our app. It gives you training plans and all that stuff, right? And you just follow the numbers on your phone. So like every day I do my workouts and it's like darn near like, their rest days and everything else. It's darn near capacity. So like the workout I did before this, like super hard and got halfway through the last set of intervals. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make this. And I like that every day. I like basically going into something and then getting brought down and then basically struggling through it. I feel like it keeps you humble, reminds you of that hard work does pay off, that sort of stuff. But yeah, I like it, man.
You do any other type of training besides on the bike? Like you're in the gym at all?
Yeah, it's cyclists are like the most unfit people ever. Like as far as like an average body, right? Like you think about it, they got like good cardio and good legs, like good quads, maybe. That's it. But they don't even have good glutes. They don't have good hamstrings. Like nothing works properly because all they do is pedal the bike. And they don't do any core work. It's like a big problem, basically. Because of the lack of impact, they get osteoporosis pretty easily and pretty young. You get a bunch of issues with back alignment and degradation of tissue, whatever, in the spinal column, plenty of stuff, right? So cyclists should be in the gym a lot. So I do it just like, I don't do a ton. I love CrossFit, and we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
Because CrossFit's super interesting to me, but I love CrossFit, but it's you can't, if you do CrossFit and you're a cyclist, you're going to be mediocre at both. You can't basically do one and be really good at the other. They just pull on the same strings, basically, too much. So, but it's a lot of similar movements to that. I mean, deadlifts, squats, simple stuff like that. Then a ton of like, dynamic movements that you'll be doing, whether it's like, Turkish get-ups or stuff like that, basically, where you're really looking at building like a strong body. It doesn't have to be crazy strong, but you just have to be strong enough to at least be healthy.
Yeah. When you were talking about like being on the bike and then going through your training where it's you get brought down and then you like power through it, or when you were saying that it's like it's always hard no matter what, you just go a little bit faster.
Yeah.
That's exactly what CrossFit is for me.
100%, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think like cyclists, you look at them, they look like T-Rexes, right?
Yeah.
They have these like gigantic legs and these like tiny little arms. Like if you went and asked like the pro peloton or the group of cyclists and the pro, like that race the Tour de France or any other pro race, like ask them to go do push-ups and like, it'll be hilarious. Like most of them will like have terrible form and crack after 5. Like they're not able to do it because like a cyclist. So when you get it in road cycling, aside from mountain biking, where you don't need a lot of like strength to handle your bike, it's all about power to weight. That's it. Cause like if you think about it going up a hill, it's so power, weight, and aerodynamics. Those 3 things matter to a cyclist. and then fueling, making sure that your fuel stores are topped off. But if you're going under 13 miles an hour, aerodynamics don't matter nearly as much. In fact, there's hardly any difference. So usually when they're climbing on steep climbs in the Tour de France, it doesn't matter. But when you're going up a hill, all that matters is how much power you have and the weight that you're carrying uphill, right? So cyclists put themselves into terrible, terrible health situations constantly. A lot of disordered eating, a ton of problems with malnutrition, that sort of stuff, where they're basically getting themselves in a spot where they're just starving themselves to the point where they see their power start to drop and then they stop, right? And just to carry less weight up a hill.
Dude.
It's nuts, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's definitely not a healthy thing. Like you see the dude win the Tour de France and you're like, he rode almost 100 miles a day for 3 weeks. He's super healthy. But like, no, he's not.
Dude, that's funny that you're like, you like cross country because it's like a good balance of like the exercise and then mountain biking. Like I'm like the opposite. Like when I mountain bike, my perfect day would be not pedaling once.
Yeah, man.
That's like how getting off the lift at North Star and just going straight down.
Yeah, that's how it is for everybody, man.
Yeah.
Like when you first start out, especially. And I get a pass at North Star every year, and I put in like 15 days up there, right? And I don't do any pedaling those days, basically.
Right.
I love that. It's super fun.
Do you have a downhill bike?
No, I have a Yeti SB55 right now. So it's like their enduro bike, and then I'll be getting their 150, the new one that's darn near a downhill bike, but it pedals uphill too.
Right. It's
nuts riding downhill bikes in those parks. It's just like a magic carpet. You just like you can ride straight over trees and boulders, and like you hardly feel it, you know. But I think like my first experience cycling, it was with a scout troop. I was like a scout leader for our church. And we went up with all these like young kids, and then the one guy who was the leader of like our congregation, really good friend of mine. He's like a fireman, like super like strong dude, right? And he gets on the bike, and we went up. If anybody's been to Lake Tahoe or ever wants to come to Lake Tahoe and rent a mountain bike, you know this, JP.
Flume Trail.
Everyone rides the Flume Trail, right?
That's right.
Yeah, that's the spot.
Neil knows that too.
That's right.
That's right.
So like the Flume Trail, that's the one that we rode. And it's like a 4.5 mile climb up to the top, 4 mile climb, something like that. And it gets super steep at the top, and it's sandy. And like, it's funny. You see all these Jerrys out there. They're like total tourists, and they're like in like flip flops. And JP rents him a bike, and then
that's me, dude. Yeah, dude. One time I did it. That was me.
And they're like just like stopped. It's like looks like a war zone going up. It's like the Trail of Tears, right? Just like people like falling over. Super hard climb. And this dude climbs up the climb 6 times in the time that I did it once.
No way.
And he wasn't showing off. He's just checking on everybody, right? But like he just climbs up 6 times, and these little kids are like passing me going up the hill, and I'm walking the bike.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh, dude, this is the worst. I hate this.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go downhill. And we went downhill, and it felt like a dirt bike, and I loved it.
Yeah.
But then, like, I kept riding with Roger, that guy that climbed up 6 times, and I was like, dude, I don't like getting beat, man. I hate this. So then I really started working hard on trying to, like, I didn't enjoy the work part of it first going up, but now, like, I genuinely get, you know, nothing beats a good descent for sure. But I get a ton of satisfaction out of climbing. It's strange. I mean, it was just like you at the gym.
Yeah.
Like, go ask a couch potato to go hit the gym hard.
Yeah.
They will not want to do it.
Yeah, they probably think I'm an idiot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It feels good. Like, I don't ride my mountain bike nearly as much, but I'm starting to once it melts again.
Heck yeah.
But clearing, like, a technical uphill, you're like, yes, dude, that was awesome. Just like the downhill, you know?
Right.
And you look back, you're like, not many people can do that. Like, that's cool, you know?
Yeah.
And it's super fun, you know?
Yeah, it's satisfying, man.
Yeah.
So if you guys are watching on YouTube, you'll see I got this notebook here because we've never prepped for a podcast before, but John made me. He sent me a bunch of topics like, this is what we're going to talk about. I'm like, okay, cool. So
Thank you,
next on the list, tell us about one thing I want to know is about arm pump, because I get such bad arm pump when I ride. And you said one of the things that you could talk about was like the lactic acid myth, I think you said. But like, dude, my arm pump's so bad. Like, I'm in pretty good shape, and I can only last like half a lap before I'm pumped up, and then that's it for the rest of the day. It never goes away.
We should probably like explain arm pump, right? Like, somebody may not know what it is. You felt it before, right, GP?
Yeah. I drive to work, and I'm like, Jesus, dude, are you kidding?
It's the worst, man. It's like the most painful thing, but then like imagine being in excruciating pain and then knowing that basically now your life is also on the line because you're in pain.
Yeah, it's scary, dude.
It's scary. So it's when you ride a dirt bike, you really should be riding it with your legs as much as possible. But like, I don't care who you are. Like, tell somebody to grip. Like, tell them like, or somebody's telling you grip with your legs, and you have arm pump. You're like, yeah, shut up. I'm gripping as hard as I can, right? And I'm about to die right now. Like, if you want to feel arm pump, like get a broom, basically. And if you can, like wrap some like weights on the string or something, and then just sit there. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can see this. But basically, like hold the broom in your hands, and then like just spin it. So like alternate hands, like spinning it forward,
like roll the boom,
like roll those weights up, right? As you're rolling it, and then like roll them down, and then do that.
I can feel it just in my hands right now. That is the muscles.
Do that for like 5 minutes. Try it. You will be done after like 30 seconds, a minute.
Does that help arm bump if you do that exercise?
I mean, theoretically, I guess it could.
Yeah.
We'll get into the cause of it, but like basically, it feels like your forearms are gonna burst. And then you lose control on your hands and grip strength. It goes down massively, and it like introduces a numbness to your hands. Like I've had it when I've been riding before, or like I'm riding and then like I look down and my hand isn't even on the grip. It's actually like floating just above the grip.
No way.
And I'm just like, what am I doing on my dirt bike? Like I should not be doing this.
Dude, that's scary when you're, especially when you're on a 450 and you're going into a turn trying to slow down, and then you hit a braking bump and you're doing that thing, you don't realize it, where you're floating over the throttle.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get it in their left arm. I only get it in my right arm, my throttle hand.
Interesting.
And so that's even worse, because then you hit a braking bump and the thing just goes brr, and you're trying to get on the brakes and you're going fast into the corner now.
Yeah, you have to hold on.
And then you're over the berm,
and you just jerry yourself over the berm.
Yeah,
right?
dude, it's sketchy.
Yeah, it's the worst. Like, and riders, tons of riders suffer from it. The easy answer to get rid of it is to put in more time on the bike.
Yeah.
So like, but let's like sit back and think about that, right? Like that's, so really what you're doing is you're conditioning the muscles to work in a specific way. So the problem basically behind it is the fact that, so your muscles have a lining. That lining is called the fascia, right? So like imagine like your muscles are like a rope, like the rope that you used to climb in school and get terrified when you were at the top of the roof line, right? Mm-hmm. That sort of rope. So that's basically what you have. But then outside of that, it's like covered in a sheet, okay? So when it's covered like that, basically those fibers, your muscle fibers, those are what contract when you're using your muscle. So flex your muscle right now, and then those fibers are actually contracting, right? You let go, they release, that sort of stuff. That happens, that takes a lot of blood. It takes a whole lot of processes that are going on in your muscle fibers to make that sort of thing happen. So as blood starts to rush in and you start to work those muscles harder and harder and harder, more blood goes there. And I don't know why. Some person probably knows better, maybe some sort of person with a medical background or something with in anatomy and physiology that also understands this phenomenon within motocross. But basically, it feels like a one-way street where the blood doesn't come back out of it. And I don't know if this is the exact theory. It makes sense, but that's always dangerous when you're talking about physiology. But it makes sense to me that what happens is you have excess blood pumping in to your muscle fibers that makes it expand, but your fascia limits that. And when it's limited, it limits your ability to contract effectively. It limits circulation. It limits your ability to flush byproduct, because when you contract your muscles, there is byproduct, like exhaust, basically. So then it gets to a point where it's so bound up inside that it basically becomes ineffective. So like they did arm pump surgery on people, which is super gnarly, which they take the fascia and they do like systematic cuts. So then like the fascia basically, then you have to train. Isn't that sketchy?
Yeah.
And then like you have to, it looks like your arm is like a cheese grater after it, right? And then the concept is that you have to like train still through that. So then basically what happens is as the fascia heals, it heals over muscle that's larger. So basically the cuts allow it to stretch. But that's a super short-term solution because your body is elastic in many ways. Like it will contract, just as if you don't train, your muscles get smaller, right? If you train, they get larger, hypertrophy, and that's your fascia is expanding then too. So the problem is, I think it's just so much force and we're gripping so hard with our hands, even though we shouldn't be, but it just happens, that basically it's just too much swelling that basically goes on. But I think that a lot of people, I think that the reason that riding more is a fix for it is because you're conditioning those muscles and growing them in a more stable route. Just like if you go to the gym and you just do chest all day, you will get bigger pecs, right?
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
That makes sense.
Like JP. JP's got huge pecs over here.
Watch out. Yeah, I would show you guys, but this is a new shirt. First time wearing it.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've always had it horrible arm pump, but like back in the day when I was racing a lot, I was riding like 5 days a week.
Yep.
And 4 or 5 days a week. And I was doing motos until my bike would run out of gas. It was like between 52 and 55 minutes.
Yeah.
And that was the only time probably for that year or two that I wasn't getting arm pump as bad. And it was just because I was so comfortable on the bike that you could, I guess, grip with your legs more, loosen up, and you could just flow. Like when you're one with the machine everywhere, then you can stay loose and you don't death grip it the whole time. And now, like, you get out there and you ride once every 2 months, you're just, no matter how good your bike is, you're still uncomfortable. So you're just gripping it.
Dude, I'm decently quick for a lap still, but that's it. Like after the lap, I am done. Like I'm at the truck and I'm waiting until the next practice. Like it's pretty embarrassing.
Yeah.
You know?
Do you have a bike now?
No, I had a 125, but I never rode it because any time that I had spare time, I was training, right? And it was fun to ride the 125 because I never got to race those. I just went straight from 80s up to 250s or 250F and that sort of stuff. So yeah, I mean, I miss it, but what do you guys think about Ryan Hughes? Like that dude, Rhino? Yeah. Like he has like all these theories on like proper positioning on the bike and like technique. And I feel like the dude's spot on. Okay. Like, I feel like he's kind of crazy and that's kind of what makes people cool is they're crazy and unique. But I think that a lot of like the things that he talks about, like basically having a hinge position at your waist, but doing so with like a strong core, and he calls it unlocking your hips, basically not rounding out your lower back. I feel like that allows for more separation of control between the lower body and upper body. So that might help. I don't know, but it's a big problem, but it definitely isn't lactic acid. Like people say, like they say it burns and it's lactic. And like, first of all, your body doesn't produce lactic acid. That's like a total myth. Like whenever you have soreness in your muscles, it's not lactic acid. That's not the case. Like, basically, the Krebs cycle, when you're working hard, your muscles break down energy. And basically, a chemical reaction happens. And just like any mathematical equation or a way of understanding it through math, there's a remainder that pops out. It's called hydrogen. There's too much hydrogen. Basically, as you work harder, you produce, take a step back. As your muscles work harder, you produce more exhaust, right? Just like a body. That exhaust, it's called byproduct. But one of the byproducts is lactate. Everyone thinks that lactate is bad. And as you work more, you basically get to this point where you reach your lactate threshold. And that threshold is where your body is producing more lactate as you work harder and harder and harder. Then you get to a point where it ramps up and it starts to make a lot. But the cool thing about lactate is it's basically race gas. It's like VP 112 or something, or U4, whatever the good stuff is these days. I have no clue. But like, it's like super, really potent fuel. So fat, for example, is like, it's like pump gas from like your local 7-Eleven. It sucks. It's like 87 octane, probably has dirt in it. Fat it's not good fuel. You can't do a whole lot with fat. People do like a lot of long, slow distance sort of stuff. And the keto people, they're all about that. But fat only gets you so far. As exercise gets more intense, you start to use glycogen, right? And sugar, basically, or carbs. And then as you get really intense, then you start to use something called creatine phosphate. It's like basically nitrous, and you only have a little bit of it on board. Hit that button, and it runs out. That's like when you sprint really hard, right? And then you just can't sprint like that again. But all the while, as you're working harder, your body starts making lactate, and it makes more and more of it, and your body can reprocess that. And it can use lactate as jet fuel, basically. And it's really good fuel for us. But it gets to a certain point where it starts making more than it can actually reabsorb. And then when that happens, it's every time you reuse lactate, or hydrogen atoms left out, and just over and over and over and over, hydrogen builds up. It creates an acidic environment in your muscles, but they still don't even know what the burn is. Like scientists have no clue why our muscles burn. It's not lactic acid. It might be like a natural defense mechanism. Might be the acidic environment. Like we have no clue.
Dude, I got a question for you. So you're a dropout, like both of us.
Yeah.
I mean,
Dude, you went for 1 semester.
Yeah, that's not a dropout. I finished one
That's
semester.
a dropout, dude.
You finished.
Yeah.
Hey, you finished.
I didn't start the episode. I just finished one. Dude.
All right, dude. Well,
yeah.
good job. All right. So at what point in the last 5 years did you find enough time to learn how to code and then learn all this stuff? Because I feel like you have a degree in this.
No, like I'm a cycling coach. So and within that process, you have to understand. But I just get frustrated with like accepting things at face value. Like going back to why, I always want to understand why something's happening, and I'm very curious. So I research and I look into things and I read. Like spend a lot of time on PubMed looking at studies, that sort of stuff.
I got a crazy vague question for you.
Yeah.
Why are humans the only thing on Earth that are like different? You know what I'm saying? Like creating shit.
Yeah. I see what you mean.
Stuff.
Nice catch.
Thank you.
That was good. Yeah. I don't know, man. I have no clue.
Dude, I've always wondered that.
Yeah.
I know it's like kind of vague and it's like, dude, because we're humans and we have like intelligence and stuff. Like, what
Some
is
of us.
it? You know? Yeah, like Conway.
Not Conway.
Yeah, no.
I don't know, man. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good question. I don't know how to solve that one, and I don't know if we can solve it.
Yeah.
So I don't jump down that road. But like, yeah, I don't know. On the arm pump thing, though, I feel like so many like moto guys, once again, it's like so far from being data driven. It's just all results driven. And it's like, they come out with these like forearm strong things, like, or it constricts your forearm.
You don't think
and,
that thing works?
I'm trying to understand mechanically how it would work.
Because I'm about to buy it because it's that bad.
Yeah. Arm pump is brutal, man.
Yeah.
People like, I've heard people say Viagra helps with it, but in my mind, that would actually be worse. Basically, that like is a vasodilator. So like it would increase the ability to have blood circulation going on.
Yeah.
So maybe if that helps get the blood back out, I don't know. But
not trying to try that one.
Yeah, exactly. I think that'd be very
wrong,
comfortable.
I got second moto coming up. I'm about to pop a Viagra.
What? Stop at the bunny ranch on the way home.
Keep JP away from the kids at the track, right?
Jesus.
You already have to do that. You got a little blue pill in the mix. Game over. You ain't making it to the second moto.
Yeah. I don't know, man. It's weird. And didn't somebody was endorsing forearm like spray.
Yeah,
right?
dude, I need that by the 5-gallon bucket. I can dip my whole arm in there, dude. Yeah, they have that. It's Moto 911 is what it's called. I've never tried it, but I've seen it at the shops.
It can't be real, right? I mean, like,
I'm pretty sure it's like icy hot or like dengue or something like that.
Yeah. It's like same thing like all these like CBD creams like out there. Like I've been dealing with like recurring tendinosis in the knee for like years now. And super frustrating stuff. And I remember like when I first started trying CBD creams, that sort of stuff, I like all of them, I was like looking at the ingredients list, I was like, this is the same exact thing as Icy Hot. It just has trace amounts of like CBD oil. Like that's like it. And I was like, so basically this is just Icy Hot. And then like, you probably like, kind of like through like a few grains of I don't know how that even works.
Yeah.
A drop of oil, right? Like the CBD isn't doing anything in that case, maybe with those oils. I don't know. Like that's the tricky thing. How do you figure out if these products actually work? You have to understand why it's happening first. And you have to understand how it solves that problem, right? Which totally could happen for CBD, by the way.
I'm pretty sure it works just for some people, you know?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure that out too. Because on episode 3, Tony from Reno as Frick came on.
Yeah.
And,
nice.
Yeah, he gave us some CBD oil from Harmonious CBD.
Yep.
And it's like a droplet you put under your tongue. So I've been having some shoulder stuff going on, but it's hard to figure out. Like, I definitely feel better taking that. I've been taking it morning and night like it says to.
Yep.
And it's hard to figure out if it's all because of that, or is it all because I've been actively like trying not to mess it up at the gym anymore,
right? Or
a combination of both, or what?
Misattribution, you know? Right? That's like such a huge thing. And for the record, I think that like CBD, from what I understand, I've done a decent amount of research into it. It is a super effective anti-inflammatory in some cases. So that could totally be it. But I think a lot of the people that are selling the CBD creams are basically just selling Icy Hot that they get from China, and then they just like put a pot leaf on it, and they're like, "Here it is, guys." Like,
gotcha.
You know what I mean? It's like not a legit product, but
enjoy.
Like, exactly.
I can see you going into that business.
Yeah, that's me. I could sell it.
Good, dude.
Yeah, like that's there's all these recovery aids because like for cycling, like you can only do so much training, right? You can only load your body with so much stress. Like the whole point of training is you load the body with stress, you let it absorb that stress with recovery, and then you repeat. And then you trend that in a specific direction that requires times where you rest for a short period, that requires times where you bring it back up. That's periodization, like 101, like the basic level of it. So with this sort of stuff, like rest for cyclists is super important. And a lot of the time, the only difference that I see between a pro and an amateur cyclist, like a really good amateur, is the fact that the pro doesn't have his job, his family, so he can just chill on the couch all day. Mm-hmm. So he can recover better and soak it up. So like because of that, cyclists like chase holy grails of recovery for sure, and they pay a lot of money for it. And they're these they look like space boots, and you put them on. They're called Elevated Legs, I think is like one brand, a bunch of other ones. And you basically like put your legs in these boots, and they like draw suction on your legs. And it's like a crazy leg massage, basically. And they say that it basically like moves all that fluid and byproduct from your training back up your legs, so then it can go back into the circulatory system. Like science is kind of inconclusive on whether that actually works. It feels really good because it feels like a leg massage. But like, let's sit back and think of why it's helping you recover better, because you're forced to lay down, right? So how do you separate if that works or if just you laying down more is actually helping you out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like that's like the importance of like looking into why on these things, because tons of people, like CrossFitters especially, like put on these like Bane masks, right? And they're like going for hypoxic training, like with these masks, and they think like, if I starve myself of air, I'll use the air when it's when it's readily abundant, I'll use it better. But that's like
you're talking about like an elevation mask or whatever.
Totally. Okay. Yeah. But it's like pseudoscience in some respects.
Yeah.
There is some science behind some of that stuff, but like got to think about why, like with all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking when you were saying that about CrossFit, like when I first started, I watched this like 16-part documentary on Matt Frazier on YouTube because I was all pumped on it.
Yeah.
And like, so they just pretty much followed him around day-to-day stuff, but he's working out so much. Like he's doing like 4 or 5 hard workouts a day plus weightlifting. And then he's stretching for like 2 or 3 hours every night. Yeah. That's all he does all day. But it's crazy. Like I'm lucky that I don't have to be anywhere except home to work.
Flex.
So
subtle flex. Yeah.
So I can work out. Like I work out from 6:30 to 7:30, and then from 7:30 to 8:30, I just stay there and I stretch for like a half hour, and then I work on my shoulders for another half hour to like recover. But it's huge because without that, I wouldn't be able to push. And that's only stretching for 30 or 40 minutes. And then sometimes I'll stretch at night too if I'm real sore. Yeah. But like that's a huge difference from what I used to do, just being sore all the time from lifting, but never stretching.
That's why everyone dopes. Yeah. Like in the bodybuilding world, like you dope to get swole, right? Like like you're genuinely taking stuff like taking like Animal Rage XL pre-workout, but then you're taking like genuine like animal pills. Like those dudes are gnarly, right?
What do you mean by animal pills?
like I don't know, some steroid that they use for like horses, right? Shit. Dudes are just gnarly with the doping in bodybuilding. Crazy. They're trying to get swole. But like cyclists, the vast majority of the stuff they take in for doping is all about recovery. Yeah. That's it. Because like they're already doing so much work, your body just can't keep up with it. So like Lance in the EPO era and like EPO or erythropoietin, the drug that they were taking back in the day, basically just raises your hematocrit or your red blood cell count, which that's the oxygen carriers in your blood, right? And it just raises it through the roof. Your body naturally makes EPO, but then they would inject it and it would just be like crazy amounts of EPO. They were going like through the roof on this stuff, like taking it so much. There were so many red blood cells that actually their blood was thickening to the point where, I don't know if they ever scientifically proved this, but people were dying in their sleep because of circulation issues because they were taking so much EPO, right? But the reason they were doing that is because as you train and you're working really hard, your red blood cells actually, the red blood cell count decreases. Like your blood basically gets trashed. It becomes less valuable to your body, doesn't deliver as much oxygen. So they take this drug, and when they're going through the Tour de France and they're 2 weeks in doing 100 miles a day at a crazy speed, they basically get fresh blood. They're like new again, right? And then they can just keep going. And it's not that it makes you like it. EPO definitely made people faster. because you had more oxygen. But the main thing is it just made it so that it was basically like they were perfectly recovered and like they were starting at square one and they didn't have to worry about it.
So is
It's
that
nuts.
like a similar thing? I've heard of people like blood doping in moto where they'll like have blood drawn at like a super extreme resting rate, and then like right before the moto or something, they'll inject that blood into them.
100%.
It's the same thing.
So yeah, so they were injecting EPO at first, like just, they were taking it through syringes, whether it was through, a lot of them did it just like subcutaneously. They were doing it like, a little needle into the glute, something like that. But then it was easy for them to find that, right? Because basically they'd be able to find that fake or synthetic, the EPO, and it would be easy to find. Like same thing with testosterone and all that stuff. So then they started just going like directly into the bloodstream. And then they got to the point where WADA, or World Anti-Doping Agency, made this thing called the biological passport. And basically every once in a while they would take readings on you at random times, and all athletes, like top athletes, they have to participate in the whereabouts program. So like my friend who's a pro cross-country mountain biker, he has to send every hour of his schedule of every day of his life to WADA.
No way.
And if he's not there and they go to his house, and that happens twice, I think, it counts as a missed test, and that counts as a doping positive.
What?
Yeah. So like that's what like Olympic level athletes have to do.
That's crazy.
That's how they have to live, because this biological passport exists where they basically take these readings on you every once in a while. And when they take these readings on you, they check for, like you said, off season, right? These dudes are completely relaxed. Their blood's in great shape. They might even do a little bit of EPO because they're not getting tested at events. They get that number raised way up, right? Then what they do is they draw all that blood and they save it. Hopefully they're saving it in good circumstances. A lot of the dudes, the cyclists back in the day, doctors were promising that they were like saving in good circumstances. They got different people's blood. They got blood that was like janky and all messed up because it wasn't saved right. Gnarly stuff.
You get like a freaking leukemia patient's blood or something.
So when they
Dude, what's
crazy,
up with
right?
Lance?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, he's got Jerry's blood. Oh, no.
So like they would take these readings, and then when they noticed like a weird dip or like a weird spike, especially outside of a normal range, they'd be like, that's a doping positive, right? So like cyclists, basically they were trying to get to the point, and moto guys too, they would take their blood out when it was really high, and then they would put it back in when they needed it most. But the tough part with that is it would throw your hematocrit levels way off. So like the goal was to constantly be doping, but to be microdosing. So you're constantly putting in just small amounts that are really hard to detect through testing. And then they would actually take this little powder and they would they'd put their thumb into it and then fill their fingernail, basically just underneath their fingernail, with a few grains of this powder. And when they're peeing into the cup, they just put their thumb into the stream of the pee. And then that little powder masks everything, and it basically makes it seem like they can't find it.
Oh.
So like they were doing a bunch of stuff like that, microdosing. So they were staying elevated all the time, but it still got to the point, like testing is always reactive, but it ends up catching up, and it was tough to catch them. But like, it's nuts. And this is why, like, so they basically had a level, like your hematocrit. I believe that if it was above 52, then it was like, that's artificial. That's not normal. And so there were certain people, like certain naturally, JP, you might have a hematocrit of like 48. And then Fiki, you might be like 36, 32. So for you actually get way more benefit from doping with that sort of drug, because at 32, you can dope all the way up to 52 and get a huge improvement. But if you're only at 48, JP, then you don't get that much improvement. And I don't know the case, but like a lot of people estimated that Lance's hematocrit was low. So then he got like more of a benefit, but I don't know if that's the case. I don't think anybody's ever said that, but it's crazy.
It's actually proven when you lose a nut, it drops.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah.
That's testosterone for sure.
Yeah.
And that helps you with recovery. I can't help but think like all those CrossFit guys, like, I don't know how he trains that much.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I was asked, I wonder about that too, especially because I don't think it's that crazy for them. I think they just get tested at the games. And I was talking to the dude that owns a gym the other day about it. I was like, how many of those guys are like on stuff all year and then they just cycle off for, and he said if I remember right, he said it's less than you think. But he was like, dude, they're never going to bust any of the top guys because it'll look horrible for the sport.
Totally. Yeah. Like, did you see when, and you're right on that, though, like the out of competition testing is what really matters.
Yeah, right.
Because dudes will spend all year just getting crazy fit. They
Right.
turn into animals. And then they show up at the CrossFit Games clean because they haven't taken anything recently. But for the last 12 months, they've been like basically artificially improving. So it's like, yeah, they got to watch it there. But like, it's kind of funny if you think about that. Like, I think a lot of people overestimate, perhaps like they just assume everyone's doping across the board. But when you really look at it, like a lot of these athletes, especially in CrossFit, that sort of stuff, the amount of training load you have to carry to perform at that level, the odds are narrowed down so far that even if you are doping, you're still like very few people, even with doping, are going to be competitive at that top level because genetics, everything has to align.
Like no matter if they chose something else besides CrossFit, they'd just be a freak at that.
Exactly. Yeah. They're like honestly, when they say like the fittest on earth, like for CrossFit, I feel like it's pretty hard to argue their all around fitness. Like they are like insane.
Oh, dude, go on YouTube. You'll find some people arguing that.
Every
video. Yeah, there's always someone that's like, dude, I could beat Frazier in a 400-meter sprint. Like, how is he the fittest? And it's like, yeah, but can you back squat like however much he does? 500 pounds? No.
Overall, I bet that if you took like a weird panel of sports that you had to do, right? Like, I guarantee you Frazier's going to be better than you.
Yeah.
That's just how it works. Like, you know what I mean? Those guys are insanely fit athletes.
Yeah, it was cool that. Well, I don't think it was last year. The year before, they had a mountain biking event.
Yeah, cyclocross.
Cool.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah. It's like, as a cyclist, it's super fun to watch. It's funny for sure, but at the same time, like they had a criterium last year.
Oh, did they?
And I was like pretty terrified because that's like I talked about in the beginning, like that's like some sketchy racing.
Yeah.
But there were some really good bike racers in that race. It's pretty fun to watch.
Well, on the cyclocross one, that dude Ricky that won it, he got busted for doping. I think he got third at the games, and then they busted him.
How ironic that the dude that won the cycling event gets busted.
But I went on his Instagram, and he's from Australia, and he's like going downhilling and stuff like that all the time. Really? So that's why he won, because he's like a mountain biker.
Yeah,
you know? He's like, like no one can touch me on this.
He's just good at that.
Yeah.
I feel like the sacrificing or crucifying your heroes sort of thing is totally true. Like cycling is forever hurt by the Lance Armstrong thing. Not by Lance. We're forever helped by Lance. We're forever hurt by our crucifixion of Lance.
I was listening to Rogan the other day. I forget who was on, but they were talking about that it was messed up, that it was like the top however many dudes were doing it.
Everyone.
But it's basically just him. He took all the brunt.
Yeah, there was a big like bus called Operación Puerto, and it was like this huge thing. Have you heard about that, JV?
No, I thought that was like a thing. I thought I ordered that the other day. I was like, with the margarita. I was like, I'll take the Oriación Viento, you know?
Nice. So like Operation Porto, I guess, or door or port, whatever you want to say, but like basically, I can't remember how it all unraveled, but they basically traced it back and they found all the blood bags of all these riders. They found receipts. They found a paper trail that basically incriminated everybody more or less in the pro peloton. And by the riders were given like plea bargains by basically like rolling over and telling on another guy and they just kept going until they got up the chain.
Whoa.
And
so who snitched on Lance?
Yeah, exactly. I think everyone did, right? And everyone just pointed as him as the guy, and he was so successful. That's what happened. And it was kind of crazy. Like a lot of these dudes that had doped for years, they served their ban, and it was a 3-month ban or a 6-month ban, and the off season was like 6 months. So they basically just served their ban during the off season. Yeah. They didn't get anything. So it's a sketchy thing, but Travis Tiger, I think it was the USADA guy that was like heading up the whole thing going after Lance. And he has like this reputation of being like a bulldog, like a dude that just does not stop. And I think that he was the guy at first that was involved with the UFC. Like, I don't know if you guys remember like when UFC was like, we're going to start testing. Yeah. And like every fight, it was just like, that dude's popped. Like every fight, there was somebody that was doping. And like after a while, I think they've like eased off because they're like, this looks really bad.
It's not going to be a fighting championship anymore when there's only one dude shows up for every round.
Everyone's doping. This looks really bad. So like, I think the sporting world learned like you can't just crucify.
Dude, I think they should let them. Like if it's a
Yeah.
pro sport, dude, if I'm watching baseball, I want to see some monster out there cranking balls out of the park every single time he's up to bat, dude. Just make it like a freak show.
And then
That's
you're
like
at work, you're at work and you go, hey, what could I get for you? Like whoever's a big ball player, you know, and he's like, and you're like, dude, enough with the doping. Like, you're a mean hitter, but like, do you want water? You know,
Dude, that'd be so much better if every football player was like bodybuilder status
Gnarly.
and just cleaning each other out.
That was the most interesting time in baseball.
Yeah,
when like
you're right, it
Mark
is.
McGuire and Sammy Sosa, remember that?
Sosa, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, Sosa. Like those guys, like when they were just hitting it further and further and further every time. Like they were, obviously on gear, but it made baseball interesting, which for me is hard to do.
Yeah, same. It's professional sports, dude. It's entertainment. They could at least have two leagues. They do in bodybuilding.
In
They have
bodybuilding.
natural and then regular, which everyone knows.
Yeah.
Like these guys are on stuff, but
Regular's
those-
Animal Farm, basically.
like anything goes, dude.
Dang.
No rules, no refs.
That's what they say that like it'll get dangerous and like I almost wonder if it would self-regulate though. If it gets dangerous enough, won't guys like kind of step back?
Well, that's the whole thing with football too, and like all those guys getting head injuries. Like, you think those guys don't know the risks?
Yeah.
I mean, most of them like come from very humble beginnings, and like that's their ticket out.
Yeah.
And they're gonna take that every single time if they could do it again.
They get it's you want 7 concussions and $15 million,
A year.
or do you want to stay where you currently are, maybe get a concussion, but definitely not get any money?
Yeah.
Like what are they going to say?
Take it every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's like those guys are
Cut
at
that
their own
check.
risk out there. Like, just let them go for it.
Yeah.
You can
Yeah.
improve the helmets and stuff. Like,
Yeah.
fine,
Isn't
but
that weird?
There
I'm like-
shouldn't be like regulated. Like, oh, you can't hit like this or whatever.
I don't follow football very much, but like, are the helmets different? They look exactly the same to me.
I don't know. They
No,
must be
they
getting a
are.
little bit
They
better.
are different?
They've got technology for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Like 6D, that helmet company and Moto, they seem to like their stuff makes sense to me.
Mhm.
To like help with concussions, but like, yeah.
I think they're all pretty technology. Like, I know Fly's pretty technology, and
Fly
Bell,
has one now. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. They just released one.
Bell and Shoei.
Showy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to your point, the risks, like, I think that they'll naturally weigh themselves out. And
I mean,
like,
Those are the type of people that, like the dude who almost got Exit 28 shut down, and the dude that got
local track,
almost
right?
got Fernley shut down. It's like you're out there riding, like everyone knows the risk. I can't imagine a scenario, knock on wood, that I get hurt and then sue the track.
Yeah.
Like no matter what, dude, you're riding and there's other people out there. There's always going to be idiots going down in front of you. Like
Yeah.
if you don't want that, like go on a single track by yourself.
our mutual friend, Nick Baugh,
Mm-hmm.
he crashed a track and in my mind, it was negligence by the track for sure. Right. Like it was bad grooming. And like first lap sort of stuff, it was just like it wasn't groomed where it should have been groomed. But he still never dreamed of suing the track. You know what I mean? Like it's just that's the nature of it. Like that's, you
Right.
just accept it. You know?
I could see if they say, "Hey, we just groomed the track. Like, go ahead," and then it's not groomed. But if it's not groomed and you got there first lap,
That is what it is.
it's on you. It's on that guy's fault because it's first lap, bro.
Sure.
You know,
And it does. Yeah.
like you should roll it if you don't know what's next. You know.
Yep.
Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know the full story on this recent one, but I read that the family couldn't pay the medical bills and all that. But then it's like that's kind of on the parents, dude. Like why you got your kid out there if you can't, like, at some point he's gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
If it's only a broken wrist or it's severe, I think this kid like broke his back or something,
Yeah.
and then they're suing the track to try to cover the medical bills or something like that. But like if you can't afford the medical bills, he shouldn't be out there anyway.
Suing isn't fundraising.
Right.
Right. But we treat it like that. Like I'm out of money and I had a bad thing happen to me. Like you GoFundMe or you do that. Like it's just crazy. And yeah, it shouldn't be that way. It's I mean, all these sports, man, they're risky. I'm glad I don't ride dirt bikes in some respects. Like I miss it, but man, like one of the last times I rode, I had bar mount bolts shear off on me like unexpectedly and got a really bad concussion from it. I'm fine with bicycles.
Yeah.
Or near as dangerous, you know. But
I think I'm more dangerous on a bicycle because I'm so sketchy.
yeah, dude.
Like I jump and as soon as I go off a jump, I'm tilted sideways and out of control. Whereas like a dirt bike, I can jump whatever and I feel fine.
I feel like dirt bikes are like playing golf like with like a shotgun, basically. Like it's just like brute force, zero finesse.
Yeah.
Like there is finesse to it, like for sure. But then when you go ride a bicycle, it's like actual true golf. It's like everything is like the smallest movements change it so much. It's crazy. I just now, like last year, got to the point where I'm like, yeah, I'm comfortable jumping, like going to Whistler and doing all that stuff. Now I'm comfortable doing it. But for dirt bike dudes, it takes so long because we're not used to such a light bike.
Yeah, true. And then you got to like Zink's property and you see those guys, the jumps that those guys are hitting, like insane.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't, I maybe would hit that on a dirt bike if I could follow someone off of it, but like then they just send it on a bicycle.
Yeah.
Dude, what is wrong with you guys?
Yeah, those guys are ridiculous.
Yeah, crazy.
Another Reno guy. Is he going to be on the Is he going to go to bed at some point?
Yeah, he needs
he'll
to.
tuck in.
He'll tuck in.
Yeah.
I got a nickname for him. I'm going to drop on the podcast, so I can't say it.
Nice. Yeah, save that one up.
Yeah. So what's next for TrainerRoad?
Geez, man. I don't know. Stuff that I can't really talk about, but pretty exciting stuff. I feel like, so like what I mentioned earlier, in terms of like human science and like how the body develops with training and performance, or I should say human performance. I feel like we have more data than anybody else in terms of high quality data for how athletes train, like cyclists and triathletes.
You know if there's any like high world-class famous people that use your app?
Yeah, there definitely are. There's
Like-
Tour de France stage winners, Ironman champions,
Oh, cool.
all that stuff. I can't say though, because we don't pay them, but we see it.
Do you
all the
pay
time.
anyone?
We do pay some, but like the sponsorship model is super interesting. Like, so the typical person that uses TrainerRoad is like a person that wants to get faster to achieve a certain goal. And usually that's a race, right? Or
Mhm.
a big ride with their, like they go to France for a week in the Alps with their buddies, and they have like this crazy like day-to-day route they're going to do on their road bikes. Or it's an enduro race that they're doing, like they're going to do one of the Enduro World Series, something like that. Whatever it is, they have like a big thing that they're going to do. So like these people are very average people doing above average things. So when an average person, like when you watch Frazier and he's like working out, doing this crazy stuff, right?
Mhm.
You watch any of the top CrossFit level athletes, you're like, yeah, that's great. I can't do that. Like, that's not really relatable to me. Like, in hearing about their 1 rep max and what they do for training, if I try to go do that, it's not going to work. So what we found is that there's actually much more power in stories that are relatable. So what we do is we farm our user base for people that are doing extraordinary things that are aspirational, but they're very normal people. So like there's a guy, his name is Mitchell Quinn, and he's from the East Coast. And he, other than rest days, which he had 1 rest day every week, he didn't miss 572 workouts in a row.
Whoa.
Like super impressive, right? He's a father, I think, of 3. He's a software engineer, like, you know, carries his job well, does all that stuff. Like that sort of dedication and consistency, that is super interesting to the average person.
Yeah.
Because then they're like, how'd you do that, man? Like, how do you balance it? What time do you get up to train? How do you manage the nutrition with getting your kids ready for school at the same time? Like,
That's all on the app?
yeah. So like, well, what we do is we, in our marketing efforts, really focus on those sort of people.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
You're just
Rather
saying
than
that.
focusing on like, we go and pay $150K for the best cyclist in the world. And he mentions us once. And like, sweet. So he's mentioned us in an interview or something. Honestly, that doesn't get you a whole lot for our product, at least. The reason for that is because we're not like selling cologne or something where somebody just goes and buys it because they see somebody else use it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're pretty cheap. People pay $15 a month or $129 a year to use TrainerRoad. But we're really expensive in terms of actual investment because people are putting in like 10 hours a week of really hard work and suffering into our app. So like, if you think about it, you can pay like $15,000 for your car, a cheap car, right? But even then you don't really invest much into it in terms of your time. Like, you're driving it around, but you probably won't work on it a whole lot, that sort of thing. You'll hand it out. But we're asking these people to work on themselves. So that's like a big investment. So when you have some top athlete say like, I use TrainerRoad, you should too. Like, it doesn't really help, right?
Mhm.
Because then the average guy's like, all right, neat, you do it, but how do I use it?
Right.
So we really focus on the stories of the average Joe. And I think that's something that's changing. I think brands like Nike and a lot of different ones, you see them starting to focus more on like, even like going to the Nike store, there might be, a picture of some really top basketball player on the wall, but they have a bunch of average people. Go on their website, they have like people that aren't even like crazy fit. They're like normal looking people. And I think that people find more value in relatable stories like that. So that's kind of that's our perception on the sponsorship side to a certain extent. There are pro athletes that are really good at delivering a good story because they have something compelling about them. And those ones we like to work with. But if you're just fast, like, I don't care, man. Like, that's neat. That's cool.
That makes so sense because it makes it more like real and relatable to the common dude. I mean, just like I watched the CrossFit documentaries on Netflix and I liked them because I was into like fitness. And then when I started doing it, I rewatched them. And then just, even though I'm nowhere near that, but just now that I've been through the same movements, like doing the kipping pull-ups and the toes to bar and the double unders and all that stuff, it's more relatable for me now to see those guys like, well, they're super good, even better than I thought they were.
Totally.
But like even, it makes sense like being real because that's where everything's going. Even on like social media, you see the guys that are winning are delivering those good stories that Andy on MFCEO just dropped a couple podcasts about social media and being real on it. And he's like, that's fine. Like, he's like, the chicks that just post pictures of their body and stuff, he's like, that's old, that's out. He's like, you can still do that stuff. He's like, I love supercars and I still post pictures of my cars and everything. But what matters is the caption and the story that I'm delivering with that photo and like how I got there. And the fact that I only paid myself $695 a month for 10 years or whatever. And I slept in the back of the store. And he's like, that's why I can win on social media. Whereas someone that just has these supercars, they post them. And then it's like, that's cool.
It's good one time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like the whole social media marketing, everything is shifting to the more real stuff. So that's smart that you guys are more focused on that than just trying to get the top dude.
Yeah, a friend of mine owns, or he runs and started the largest influencer management company for social platforms, basically. So basically what they do is they're like an agency and they come up with marketing campaigns for like brands, but then they also have, people should check it out if they're on Instagram or anything else. It's FOHR. You can check it out. Like you can sign up for it. It's free. And basically when you create an account, then it'll give you like an idea of how much you could charge for a post, that sort of stuff, right? Okay. As an influencer. But basically what they are able to do is they have a fix. GoPro's down.
That's right. We'll just run the audio. We're going to wrap it up soon anyway. So we'll just keep running the audio. Yeah.
So they have like a good fix, on everybody that basically is a good influencer, and they can like quantify that, right? And then they work with brands like NetJets, the private flight company, Jaguar, Yves Saint Laurent, like high-end brands, right? And then they make all these campaigns, and you'd think that like they have insane budgets, they have all this stuff, and it's certainly like a really good life. Like, they fly private, and then they go to the Four Seasons in some amazing place, and then they drive a Jaguar around and do all that stuff, and they have like these other activations that they do with these brands. But it's done in a very like normal way. It's not like one that's overly suggestive with, women being shown in very little clothing, right? It's not overly suggestive with men overtly showing wealth and possession. It's not about that. It's more about like telling the context of the story. And I think it's really good proof that like people these days, all of us, what we want is something relatable. Right. We want to know that the same why that motivates you is the same why that motivates me. And then that way I can figure out how to be better at something.
Yeah. It's all about being real.
Yeah.
But
that's why your stuff takes off too.
That's what I was just going to say. I've been on to that idea for years. I just haven't really figured out how to like use it that good yet. But even like the videos that got a bunch of views a few years ago, millions, they're all done on a cell phone. And I told JP, like, because we were like, why would we do this? Like, we're trying to get better and better content. Yeah. And I was like, no, it's got to be like almost bad. Yeah. But like, that's why they worked good, because it's just me in the back of the car on the cell phone. And so when people see it, even at that point, maybe I had like 20,000 on Facebook, and then the video would get 1 million views. So 1 million minus 20,000, that's the first time they're ever seeing me. And that when you see that video, it just seems like even though that I've been doing it for years and like I have real songs and all that stuff,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, this dude's just in the back of a car. Like he doesn't do this.
He's just like me,
And it seems like raw. Yeah.
but way better than me.
Uh-huh.
Maybe
And
I
then
can be
that's
like
why you get tons of comments of like, this guy needs a record deal and like all this stuff, but they don't even, what I didn't figure out, and I still can't, is how to turn those people into like real fans more than just a Facebook like. That's what all of them are now. And then Facebook changing the algorithms and like not being able to reach those people anymore pretty much anyway. But that's why I stopped doing those videos, even though they were effective. It's just like, yeah, I was getting a bunch of views, but it was just the number that was good. 8 million views on one video looks good, but it didn't really translate all that much into like Spotify plays
totally
and real fans, people coming to shows and stuff like that. I think now if it happened, maybe it would translate more because I'm more developed and my catalog's bigger. We have way better and more videos for people to then go back to. But for the vast majority of that, I guess kind of like a sales funnel, you know, you have 8 million views and maybe 100,000 of those people are going to look for you. And then 10,000 of those people become your fan. But I didn't have enough material back then for them to become a fan. You know, I only had maybe like 10 songs on Spotify or something. Now we have 63, 69 by the time this airs.
Yeah.
So
on the real, you're a contradiction, right? I feel like that's why like a lot of people found it super compelling. Like they looked at it, they're like, this dude's a redneck. Like, and he raps, like that's crazy. That's like oil and water. So then like people see that and then that brought them in. But then the fact that you actually had talent afterward, where the people are like, whoa, like this guy's actually talented. So like you were bringing him through the funnel, right? But that's a really big problem for a lot of content creators is how do I take people, or I should say advocates or fans or loyalists, whatever you want to call them, how do I take them and then leverage their fandom, grow it more, and basically get to the point where we can monetize effectively? And I think it all comes down to value exchange. Forgive me. And I don't think, I think that in many cases you'll find like certain people can become viral and they're really good at that, but viral doesn't translate over to actually making money.
right.
And finding out how to make money, you can learn something from the viral part of it. You just have to find the different avenue then to get to a point where you can actually, you know, push it forward. Like Hot Lap, sure, like we had good idea. It was a great idea, but we didn't have the right team, or there were roadblocks in the way that we couldn't overcome. But it doesn't mean that you don't learn from it to apply it to the next thing, you know? But the crazy thing is the companies pay millions of dollars, millions and millions, probably, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars every year in this country alone, just to try to figure out how to do what you've been able to do, which is find something that actually clicks with people. Because like if a brand like PG&E or like, I don't know, Kraft mac and cheese could figure that out, you know how much that would mean in terms for them for sales? Like it'd be huge. Right? So maybe you're just a consultant. Maybe you go and consult for Kraft.
Yeah.
Take Kraft money.
Yeah, I should.
Get a box of mac and cheese because that is good.
Do it for product.
Yeah.
Pallet of mac and cheese. Like, all right, it's fine.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. All right, I guess we'll start wrapping it up. I think we've been through almost everything on this list.
That's a lot.
But yeah, I think while we still got people, I'm going to mention we did get our first sponsor, which would have aired at the beginning, or I guess our second sponsor, because Walden's is our sponsor for most of the episodes. But there would have been a little commercial aired at the beginning of this episode. But yeah, so we just want to mention it again. We got Matt that's throwing the hard enduro race.
Oh, sweet.
I got some notes too. Yeah, Enduro Fest.
Yeah.
May 4th out at the Wild West Motorsports Park, the old Mustang track out east of Sparks.
Those dudes are gnarly.
That's a stomping ground. That's where I broke my wrist in 04.
Back when it was Mustang?
Yeah.
The moto track?
Yeah.
Was that even dirt out there, or was it just rock?
It was some dirt.
It depends who was running it, dude. When Master Pulls had it, it was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
That's back in the day when Neil fucking effing he was about the same size he is now on a RM100 in the 80 beginner class, and he hit the step up. I think he whole shotted the race, hit the step up, and then there was like a 6-pack of doubles, after it, and he hit that first double, and then the bars just fell all the way back in his lap, not even close to being tight. So good times out there. But yeah, that's where Enduro Fest is at, May 4th.
Cool place too.
Yeah.
Oh, super impressive venue.
Yeah, everyone already knows the info because of the commercial that they heard. But
yeah, that was a good commercial, dude. Good job on that.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome.
We haven't recorded it yet.
Should I plug some things before we shut
dude.
off?
Whatever you want.
Yeah. So I guess talk about the TrainerRoad side of things. So if there are cyclists, I don't imagine there are a ton of cyclists that are like super into that sort of thing. Training real hard, you never know. But I do another podcast on the side. It's kind of a fun job, fun gig there, the mountain bike podcast. There's a TrainerRoad podcast too. So if you're a fan of that sort of thing, you can check it out. It's actually the most popular cycling podcast. It's huge. It's called the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. But yeah, those two things. And then if I could just plug one other thing, I know this sounds like super corny and cheesy, but I genuinely feel like you guys have a platform, that sort of thing. You can inspire people to do good things. And I believe in that sort of thing. And I think that if people that listen to this can just do one thing to go help somebody, like, whatever it is, like be like JP, how JP smiles at folks smiled at folks when they came into Walden's when he worked there, that sort of thing. Just do one good thing. If you do one good thing, it helps us.
Dude, you know what? I talked about this not too long ago, but the ripple effect. I've been thinking about that. And like you don't even have to go out of your way to do a good thing. Like all I have to do is post that I went to the gym, and dude, I've been doing that since the beginning of the year. And like today I just posted a video of me squatting for the first time, but you wouldn't believe how many people are hitting me up now about joining CrossFit or just going to the gym, or like JP's going to get in the gym. Neil's been in the gym. Yeah. Like, dude, it's crazy. Chef and like, Michael. I didn't go out of my way to like,
you should all go to the gym.
You guys need to do this. Like, I just posted about it, and it causes a ripple effect. And then maybe that person starts working out. They post about it. Their friend starts working out. Like, that's doing a good thing.
Just share what makes you happy. Like, you don't have to go and open a door for somebody, even though we probably should. But like, just share what makes you happy, and that could be the good thing, man. Yeah,
dude, I open the doors for like older people, and they're like blown away.
Yeah,
it's like no one does. They're like,
dude, that's
they're like, whoa,
that's big ROI on that one, right? It's like not a lot put in, and you feel like a king.
It's so weird. I'm like, dude, what are you talking about?
Keep opening doors.
I will. Dude.
John's out there doing missions. You can keep opening doors. Good job.
What are you talking about?
I'm saying keep opening doors.
All right, I will. And if I open the door for you, you better say thank you.
I will, but I'll think about how many lives John actually impacted compared to your door opens.
Well, I'm confused what you're talking about because my first name is actually John, so I do.
Touche. All right, Jon Lee is a good dude. You're just opening
He's a good dude. Yeah. Come on in, I'll let you in.
Yeah. And if folks want to geek out on more stuff like I geek out on all the time, they can check me out on Insta. So
where do they find
Lee Jonathan _.
That's it. Yeah, Lee Jonathan _ Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. He's got a good following on Instagram. John, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me,
John. It was fun. I learned a lot. Just asking questions that I want to know the answer to.
Yeah, I just listened a lot, and you're super smart, dude. It's like, even though people might tell you different, you're actually smart.
I'm a college dropout, man.
That's right. Yeah, me and John dropouts. You, finisher.
Semester.
That's a mentality right there, dude. I'm a 1 semester finisher.
I failed it, though.
Finished.
Where can people support our podcast?
Yeah, first of all, the best way to support is just by subscribing and rating the podcast.
5-star.
Yeah, we have 1 2-star rating. So whoever did that, please come forward.
Yeah, dude, we had this on the mountain bike podcast.
Yeah,
some dude, it was like Dirk from Tahoe, I think was the name that he put down.
Dirk.
Yeah, and he gave us like a 2 out of 5 star, because we always say on the mountain bike podcast, give us 5-star reviews, but if you feel like we don't earn a 5-star review, email us and let us know what we can do to earn that.
Okay.
Because we want to earn it, right? Uh-huh. So like this dude left us a 2-star review. So then I was like, and my co-host Steven, he was like pissed off about it. He's like, come on, man. Like, who is that guy? You know? And then I was like, no, what we're going to do, we're going to like deputize Dirk from Tahoe. So basically like made him like a character on the show. Like,
nice.
We didn't invite him on or anything like that, but I was like, there's this guy named Dirk from Tahoe. He isn't satisfied with the podcast because of this. So we're going to be better on this. We're listening to you, Dirk. And then like every week he would go 2.5 stars. 3 stars, 3.5. Now we're at 5 stars with Dirk,
Nice.
so we're tight.
Attaboy.
Nice.
Yeah. So call out that 2-star
sick.
guy and say, dude, we just want to earn your trust. That's
Yeah.
it.
I don't know who it is because he didn't write a review, but where
Just 2'd you? That's
yeah,
it?
just a 2.
That's
it.
That's disrespectful, dude.
Honestly, dude, it's probably like you.
I
think.
5-star. I think it might be
5-starred
Conway.
it. It could be Conway.
Oh,
It's probably
probably
dude.
is
Every time I
Conway.
post like a poll on Instagram or like where you can slide up like the fire thing, I'll get 100% all the way maxed out, and it'll be JP, Adam, Garrett, Allen, the guys I make music with. They're the ones they do 0, 0, 0. So then my average is like a 92% every time, and it's always only them.
It's so funny. They'll do that when I do things too, like yes or no, and you
Oh, yeah, I
want
did that
someone to
yesterday.
say,
You're like, who wants to shoot? Or like photos, yes, no.
Yeah.
No.
yeah, video, yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
it's definitely Conway.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Come forward, Adam.
All right. If you want to support the podcast, go to gotobedpodcast.com where you can pick up some cheap merch. And we got blankets, pillows, and we've had a merch order, and the merch was not high enough quality to get shipped, so we got that fixed.
That's
It's a
true.
little
I fixed
pixelated.
that last
I've done
night.
that before. Nice.
So we got that shipped. Yeah, we're good there. We got a link to our PayPal on there and our Patreon, where if you become the top tier legendary sleeper, you can donate $15,000 a month for the next 6 months, and JP will get Go to Bed tattooed on his head. And we've been saying side of the head, but he said that he's going to get it on the top with the dolphin and the logo and everything.
Ooh.
Yeah, side of the head, because like my Nana and Papa, like,
Dude, face tats are never a good choice.
no, and the side of the head you could kind of see
Yeah, you can
sometimes.
still
So
see it.
top of the head, where like, oh, dude, if I get top of the head, I'm thinking about it, and I go bald. If my Filipino fades and I actually go bald, you would see it would be like the cul-de-sac, the go to bed
You also
cul-de-sac.
get plugs over your tat.
Plugs? What's that?
Earplugs.
Hair
Dude.
plugs.
Oh no! Like,
They
where
look like Trump. After.
yeah, no, I'll let it
Dude,
go.
how sick would it be if Trump had a head tat?
It'd be
Maybe he does. Maybe that's why he's having issues growing hair.
He folds his hair over the
Where does it begin and where does it end, man?
what?
His hair.
Honestly, I
We don't
think it's
know.
an illusion. I think the thin part is the start, and the heavy part where you think it starts is the end.
I'm thinking so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I
Actually,
don't
if you
know.
look at it, it looks like a triangle. I don't know what that is.
I don't know. Is there anyone else in the world that has hair like him though?
Nobody. Not
Yeah,
even
yeah.
bad. Not even bad mannequins.
Oh, Shane McElrath has hair like that.
Dude, Shane's on the quick path to being Blake Baggins. That's the KTM curse right there.
That's so true.
All right. Send us an email, gotobedpodcast@gmail.com. Like, subscribe. You can follow us on Instagram at Go to Bed Podcast. We're Go to Bed Podcast on everything.
And if you're still listening, go to Versace Savachi 17's Instagram and tell him to go to bed. He's been blocking everyone except for our buddy Sam. So that's a
No, Sam did get blocked now.
no way.
Yeah, well, I haven't confirmed it with him, but his comment's gone.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, Savachi, if you're listening, you ain't getting any more rides.
He's listening for sure.
Yeah.
I hope he does.
I hope
But,
so too.
Yeah. All right. Go to bed.
Go to bed. Good
Go
night.
to bed.
Good night.
Honestly, if he did listen, he would be intrigued by this episode. Like every other episode, he'd be like, screw these guys. But this one, he's like, yeah, maybe I'll get that app, improve myself. You know?
Cut that check, cut that check, cut that check. I need my check, I need my check, I need my check, I need my check.